بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How are you, my students? I hope that you're happy and healthy and ready for today's lesson, which is the Unit 2 conversation. But before we do that, let's revise our previous lesson. The gerunds after verbs. Gerunds are the ing form of a verb. They act like nouns and answer the question, what? For example, I recommend turning off the lights when you leave the room. We use gerunds after certain verbs such as advise, enjoy, intend, quit, and so on. Also, we took the infinitives after the verbs. An infinitive is to plus the base form of the verb. Like gerunds, infinitives act like nouns and answer the question, what? For example, here, don't forget to reuse that plastic container. Or do they intend to buy a hybrid car? We use infinitives after some verbs like intend, offer, start, try, plan, and so on. And notice here, these verbs, the one with the marks here, can be followed by an object before the infinitive. For example, they want to plant a garden, or they want us to plant a garden. Some verbs can be followed by either an infinitive or a gerund. The meaning of sentences with these verbs is almost the same with either the gerund or the infinitive. We can say, for example, either I love studying or I love to study. So some verbs take them both, the gerunds and the infinitives. One slight difference is that the person is more likely to use the gerund at the moment of doing the activity. And at the moment of the activity, it's preferable to use the gerund. So let's jump to today's objectives. The conversation lesson here. Use the gerund plus the infinitive to give an advice. So we'll be giving advice using gerund and infinitives. The second one, to use the real talk phrases in new sentences. Find how the conversation topic came up. Last one, write a conversation using phrases for making suggestions. So what do you see here in this picture? What do you see here in this picture? Yes, this is a garbage bin or a trash can that is for recycling. You can notice here it says we recycle, and there's a maybe plastic or glass bottle and some of paper waste. What do you think has been happening here? So what do you think has been happening here near the trash bin here? The people, what were they doing? Maybe anything, that's correct. Maybe people were having a barbecue or a picnic and threw all the cans and bottles in the trash. So maybe they were having a barbecue or maybe a picnic, and then they threw all the trash in the trash can or the trash bin. So we're going to listen to a conversation between two friends, Ibrahim and Jassim, cleaning up after a party. So Ibrahim and Jassim, once the party is finished, after the party, they are cleaning up. So we'll be listening to a conversation between them. Again, conversation between Ibrahim and Jassim, cleaning up after a party. So listen with your books closed. So now close your books and just listen to the conversation. Let's.
Jassim, that was a great garden barbecue, but there are soda cans everywhere. I'll help you clean up. Where do you keep your recycling bins? Ibrahim, now here, we don't recycle. Jassim, you don't recycle? Why not? Ibrahim, I don't know. It's always seemed like it would be a hassle. Jassim, don't you think it would be a good idea to make the effort? Ibrahim, I guess. I do feel kind of guilty about it. But then again, does it really make that much of a difference? Jassim, are you kidding? Recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill space. It's a no-brainer. Ibrahim, I just don't have the patience. It seems like a lot of extra work. It's so much easier to just chuck everything in the garbage than to sort it by material for recycling. Jassim, that's a lame excuse. Recycling is a piece of cake. It becomes automatic before you know it. Ibrahim, I suppose you're right. Okay, I'll start to recycle. Jassim, great. Hey, why are you throwing that can in the garbage? Ibrahim, whoops, old habits are hard to break.
So this is a conversation between Ibrahim and his friend Jassim cleaning up after the party. As you notice here, it's about recycling. It's about recycling the garbage that is left after the party. Jassim is trying to convince Ibrahim to go and recycle everything that he throws out. So does Ibrahim recycle? Why or why not? From the conversation that you just heard, does Ibrahim recycle? No, he thinks that it's just a hassle. So why or why not? As we said before, that he thinks that it's recycling is a hassle. At the end, of course, his friend convinced him to recycle. So again, we'll be listening again. Listen and read along. So now open your books, listen and read along. So let's listen to the conversation together.
Jassim, that was a great garden barbecue, but there are soda cans everywhere. I'll help you clean up. Where do you keep your recycling bins? Ibrahim, now here, we don't recycle. Jassim, you don't recycle? Why not? Ibrahim, I don't know. It's always seemed like it would be a hassle. Jassim, don't you think it would be a good idea to make the effort? Ibrahim, I guess. I do feel kind of guilty about it. But then again, does it really make that much of a difference? Jassim, are you kidding? Recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill space. It's a no-brainer.
So you see Jassim here trying to convince Ibrahim. He's saying recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill spaces. It's a no-brainer. So it's a no-brainer. It doesn't take a smart person to know that this is the correct approach. Of course, as mentioned before, nowhere we don't recycle. Ibrahim says that we don't recycle. Jassim here says you don't recycle. Why not? He says, I don't know. It just always seems like it just always seemed like it would be a hassle. And Jassim is asking him, don't you think it would be a good idea to make the effort? He's asking him to try to make the effort. It's a no-brainer. Try to make the effort to recycle. He said, I guess. I do feel kind of guilty about it. So he feels guilty, and which is a good thing. So let's continue with the conversation here, the second part of the conversation.
Ibrahim, I just don't have the patience. It seems like a lot of extra work. It's so much easier to just chuck everything in the garbage than to sort it by material for recycling. Jassim, that's a lame excuse. Recycling is a piece of cake. It becomes automatic before you know it. Ibrahim, I suppose you're right. Okay, I'll start to recycle. Jassim, great. Hey, why are you throwing that can in the garbage? Ibrahim, whoops, old habits are hard to break.
So Ibrahim says here that, as he says here, I just don't have the patience to sort everything and put it in their correct recycling trash can. So he says, I don't have the patience to sort everything, the plastic, the paper, the glass, to throw them in their appropriate recycling bin. He says, I just chuck everything into the trash, everything into the garbage, then to sort it by material for recycling. And Jassim says, that's a lame excuse. That's a lame excuse. So you can notice here, lame, is it good or bad? Is it a good excuse or a bad excuse? So you can know the meaning of the word lame just from the context. Recycling is a piece of cake. It becomes automatic before you know it. I suppose you're right. Okay, I'll start to recycle. Great. Then, why are you throwing the can in the garbage? He said, old habits are hard to break. So what is it that Ibrahim thinks is a hassle? Do you agree? So Ibrahim, what is it that he thinks is a hassle? And do you agree with him? Of course, it's very obvious. So he thinks that recycling is a hassle. Do you agree with him? This is according to your opinion. Of course, we don't agree that recycling, helping nature and going green is a hassle. So, of course, we don't agree with him. How does Ibrahim's voice sound when he says, I guess? Ibrahim, when he said, I guess, how does he sound when he said, I guess? So let's see the answer here together. He sounds a little bored, not enthusiastic. He's not enthusiastic about the idea of recycling. So his friend Jassim had to convince him of recycling. What's a no-brainer according to Jassim? When Jassim said that's a no-brainer, what was he referring to? What's a no-brainer according to Jassim, of course? Let's see the answer here together. Recycling. So recycling to Jassim is a no-brainer. Do you think that chuck is more or less formal than throw out? So the word chuck, to him when he said, I chuck everything in the garbage, or the word throw out. Again, do you think that chuck is more, do you think that the word chuck is more or less formal than the word here to throw out? The word chuck. So, of course, it's less formal. Again, to say chuck is less formal than saying throw out when you're talking about garbage. What does Jassim mean when he says that Ibrahim is giving a lame excuse? When Jassim told Ibrahim that's a lame excuse, what does he mean? From the conversation, of course, when he said that's a lame excuse. What does he mean by lame excuse? Let's see the correct answer here together. He means it is a bad or weak excuse. You can know from the context of the sentence here of the conversation that lame means bad excuse. That when he said that it's a lame excuse, means it's a bad excuse or a weak excuse. Do you ever give lame excuses for things you do? So this is up to you. The things that you do you give lame excuses or do you give appropriate excuses? Of course, if you make things wrong. And the second one, what does Ibrahim mean when he says recycling is a piece of cake? What does Ibrahim mean when he says recycling is a piece of cake? So, do you ever give lame excuses? Of course we don't. This last question again. What does Ibrahim mean when he says recycling is a piece of cake? When you describe something that is a piece of cake, do you actually mean an actual piece of cake? Of course not. So, when Ibrahim says that it's a piece of cake, what does he mean? This is obvious. He says it means that it's very easy. When you describe doing something as a piece of cake, it means that it's extremely easy. So the real talk here, let's read it together. A hassle, something that is inconvenient to do. That's what Ibrahim thinks of recycling. When he says, I think recycle is a hassle, he thinks that recycling is something that is inconvenient to do. It doesn't suit him. I guess an enthusiastic way of agreeing with someone. When you say to someone, I guess, it means that you agree with him, but you are not excited about agreeing with him. Again, an enthusiastic way of agreeing with someone. A no-brainer, a question or problem that has no obvious answer or solution. A no-brainer, a question or problem that has an obvious answer or solution. So, a question or a problem that the solution for it is very easy and very obvious. Chuck, as we took before, it means throw out. Lame, bad or inadequate. A piece of cake, very easy. Lame, bad or inadequate. A piece of cake, very easy. Again, when you describe something as piece of cake, it means that it's very easy. So about the conversation, we have these three questions here. How does the subject of recycling come up? What are some reasons Jassim give for recycling? Why does Ibrahim say whoops at the end of the conversation? Again, how does the subject of recycling come up? When they were having the conversation, the subject of recycling, how did it come up to the conversation? Question number 2, what are some reasons Jassim gives for recycling? Jassim trying to provide some reasons for Ibrahim, to encourage Ibrahim to recycle. What are some of these reasons? Question number 3, when Ibrahim says whoops at the end of the conversation, what does he mean? Again, question number 3, why does Ibrahim say whoops at the end of the conversation? So let's listen to the conversation together and answer these questions.
Jassim, that was a great garden barbecue, but there are soda cans everywhere. I'll help you clean up. Where do you keep your recycling bins? Ibrahim, now here. We don't recycle. Jassim, you don't recycle? Why not? Ibrahim, I don't know. It's always seemed like it would be a hassle. Jassim, don't you think it would be a good idea to make the effort? Ibrahim, I guess. I do feel kind of guilty about it. But then again, does it really make that much of a difference? Jassim, are you kidding? Recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill space. It's a no-brainer. Ibrahim, I just don't have the patience. It seems like a lot of extra work. It's so much easier to just chuck everything in the garbage than to sort it by material for recycling. Jassim, that's a lame excuse. Recycling is a piece of cake. It becomes automatic before you know it. Ibrahim, I suppose you're right. Okay, I'll start to recycle. Jassim, great. Hey, why are you throwing that can in the garbage? Ibrahim, whoops, old habits are hard to break.
So now that we have finished listening to the conversation for the third time, let's answer the questions. How does the subject of recycling come up? They were cleaning. What brought the subject of recycling? Okay, let's see the correct answer here. Jassim and Ibrahim are cleaning up after a party, and there are soda cans everywhere. So they were cleaning, and there are soda cans everywhere. And Jassim noticed Ibrahim is not putting them in the recycling bin. So that's from where the subject of recycling came up. What are some reasons Jassim gives for recycling? Jassim gives some reasons for recycling. What are some of these reasons to convince, of course, his friend Ibrahim to recycle? So let's check the correct answer here together. Jassim says that recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill space. So these are the reasons Jassim provides for recycling in an attempt to convince Ibrahim to recycle with him. Jassim says that recycling reduces energy consumption, lessens air and water pollution, and saves landfill space. The last question here, why does Ibrahim say whoops at the end of the conversation? Again, why does Ibrahim say whoops? Why does Ibrahim say whoops? What did he do? You say whoops when you do something wrong. We know that. So why does Ibrahim say whoops at the end of the conversation? Because Ibrahim accidentally threw a can into the garbage rather than recycling it. Because Ibrahim threw the can in the, let's say, regular garbage can rather than recycling garbage can or garbage bin. So your turn here, role play with a partner. What is something you do that is good for the environment? So discuss with your partner what is something that you do, you always do, maybe as a habit, that is good for the environment. Suggest to your partner that he or she do this too. Give reasons and use phrases for making suggestions. So as the conversation between Jassim and his friend Ibrahim, try to convince your friend, your colleague, to be more like you and try to save the environment by making suggestions for him, of course. And these are the you can use these to make suggestions in the make suggestions box. For example, you might want to consider plus gerund. You might want to consider going green, like that. You might want to consider throwing the can in the recycling bin. So you say you might want to consider plus the gerund. How about gerund? Maybe by asking him, how about throwing the can in the recycling bin? How about going green? So how about and gerund. Don't you think it would be a good idea plus infinitive? Don't you think it would be a good idea to throw the can in the recycling bin? To throw. So don't you think it would be a good idea plus the infinitive? I think you'll find. If you throw the can in the recycling bin, I think you'll find it maybe satisfying. If you, I think you'll find. So this is the consequences, the effect of doing a good deed. And last one, if you don't mind, I'd like to suggest gerund. If you don't mind, this is a more polite way. If you don't mind, I'd like to suggest throwing the can in the recycling bin. Which expression does Jassim use in the conversation? Which one did Jassim choose? So, of course, it's don't you think it would be a good idea plus the infinitive. And with that, we reach the end of this lesson. See you next lesson, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.